Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. The Admiral stood motionless on the bridge of the flagship, a structure of black alloy and living crystal that stretched for kilometers through the void. Beyond the vast forward viewport, space unfolded in silent layers of darkness, pierced by distant stars. Near the center of the display hung a small, unremarkable blue sphere, third planet from a yellow star, catalog designation already logged, analyzed, and archived. Earth. The Admiral's four eyes moved independently, scanning overlapping streams of data projected into the air around him. Reports from long-range scouts, predictive models, cultural simulations, technological assessments, each one confirmed what he already suspected. This world was insignificant, interesting in a biological sense perhaps, but strategically trivial. Their observation vessels had arrived 3 months earlier, slipping into the outer reaches of the system without triggering a single alarm. Invisible to every known human sensor, they hovered beyond the orbits of the moons and gas giants, recording everything, every radio transmission, every military exercise, every burst of electromagnetic noise humanity produced as it went about its small, noisy existence. What they saw disgusted the Admiral's kind. "These creatures are barely civilized," he said at last, his voice calm but edged with disdain. "They still burn the remains of dead organisms to generate energy." A ripple of agreement passed through the bridge crew. To the hegemony, fossil fuels were not merely primitive, they were obscene. "They propel themselves with chemical explosions," the Admiral continued. "Their weapons rely on metal projectiles and crude chemical reactions. Their fastest spacecraft would struggle to outrun one of our civilian cargo haulers." A junior officer shifted his weight nervously. "And their expansion beyond their homeworld, Admiral?" The Admiral allowed himself what passed for a smile among his species, a slight baring of serrated teeth. "Non-existent. They have not left their own solar system in any meaningful way. A few probes, a handful of manned missions barely reaching their moon. No permanent extrasolar presence, no faster-than-light capability." Commander Ox, his second in command, stepped forward and activated his datapad. "Our cultural analysts confirm it, sir. The species is divided into hundreds of competing political entities. They fight each other constantly over territory, resources, ideology. There is no unified planetary authority." "Predictable," the Admiral said. Ox continued. "They possess nuclear fission technology, but they use it primarily as a weapon. Their energy infrastructure remains inefficient. Their computational systems are improving, but slowly, incrementally." "In other words," the Admiral said, turning back toward the distant blue dot, "they are exactly what they appear to be. A primitive species, loud, violent, clever enough to build tools, but not wise enough to stop killing itself with them." The Admiral walked toward the observation window. From this distance, Earth was beautiful in its simplicity. Blue oceans, white clouds, a thin atmosphere clinging desperately to rock. A world ripe for integration. "Begin the standard 100-year observation protocol," he ordered. Ox hesitated. "With respect, Admiral, do we truly require a full century? Our models indicate that a direct conquest would succeed with minimal losses. 10 ships would be sufficient." The bridge grew quiet. The Admiral turned slowly, his gaze settling on Ox with unsettling intensity. "That kind of thinking destroyed the First Empire." Ox stiffened. "Sir?" "We do not rush," the Admiral said coldly. "We observe, we learn, we adapt. That is how the hegemony conquered 200 worlds. Overconfidence is the luxury of short-lived empires." He gestured toward the data streams. "Every civilization appears primitive at first glance. The ones that survive are the ones that hide what they are becoming." Ox bowed his head. "Of course, Admiral. The long-range monitoring stations will be deployed immediately." As the commander turned away, the Admiral returned his attention to Earth. His confidence was absolute. Nothing in the data suggested deviation from established developmental patterns. Humanity's technological curve was predictable. Their social instability would slow them further. In 100 years, they would be slightly more advanced, slightly more dangerous, but still hopelessly inferior. They would surrender. Far from the flagship, unseen and undetected, the hegemony's observation network came online. Dozens of invisible stations positioned themselves throughout the solar system, weaving a web of surveillance around the unsuspecting planet. They drank in human transmissions, cataloged languages, decoded entertainment broadcasts, and monitored military communications. To the alien analysts, it was almost boring. Human media fascinated them in an anthropological sense. Stories filled with monsters, gods, wars, and impossible technologies. But the analysts dismissed them as fantasy, a species amusing itself with exaggerated fears and dreams of power. They imagine enemies far beyond their capabilities, one analyst remarked during a routine briefing. Classic, primitive behavior. Imagination without execution, another replied. Decades would pass, then centuries, and when the hegemony finally returned, Earth would kneel like all the others. The admiral felt a deep satisfaction settle over him. This conquest would be clean, efficient, textbook. He had no way of knowing that, at that very moment, deep beneath Earth's surface, a single anomalous signal flickered briefly into existence. Too faint, too strange, and too short-lived for his sensors to register. The hunters believed they were watching prey. They did not yet understand that they had given their prey something far more dangerous than fear. They had given it time. Dr. Sarah Whitaker had spent her entire career searching for patterns in noise. Most astronomers did. The universe was loud, chaotic, filled with radiation from stars, quasars, pulsars, and countless natural phenomena. Real discovery came from learning to separate meaning from randomness, which was why the data on her screen terrified her. The signals had appeared near the orbit of Jupiter, brief, precise bursts of radio energy emerging from empty space. No known satellite, no probe, no natural source. And yet the patterns were unmistakable, intentional. Sarah leaned closer to the display, her tired eyes scanning the equations again. She had already checked them dozens of times. The math was consistent. The structure repeated with variations too complex to be accidental. Someone was transmitting, and they were doing it without leaving a physical trace. Her office door buzzed softly. "Doctor, the committee is waiting." She exhaled slowly and shut down the secondary displays. For 3 days, she had hoped she was wrong. For 3 days, she had prayed that a missed variable or corrupted dataset would make this nightmare disappear. It hadn't. The conference room was already full when she entered. 12 of the most powerful scientific minds on the planet sat around the table, representing agencies that rarely agreed on anything. Flags lined the walls. Screens glowed softly, waiting. Sarah stood at the head of the table and activated her presentation. 3 days ago, she began, our deep space monitoring systems detected artificial signals originating from the outer solar system. These signals do not match any known human technology. A murmur rippled through the room. Dr. Martinez from NASA leaned forward. Artificial how? Sarah tapped the screen. Complex mathematical structures filled the display. The signals encode information using non-human mathematical frameworks. The logic is internally consistent, but it doesn't align with any system we've developed. Silence followed. A Russian physicist spoke next. "You're saying this is not us." "I'm saying," Sarah replied carefully, "that this is not human." Another voice, sharp with skepticism, cut in. "Could it be an unknown natural phenomenon?" Sarah shook her head. "Natural phenomena don't scan. These signals repeat in sweeping patterns. They map orbital trajectories. They adjust frequencies in response to our emissions." Her voice dropped slightly. "Something is watching us." The room went very still. A representative from China broke the silence. "If that is true, what do you recommend?" Sarah had rehearsed this answer for days. It still felt unreal, saying it aloud. We prepare. Several people spoke at once. Prepare for what? Contact? Defense? Sarah raised her hand. We don't know their intentions, but history is very clear about one thing. When a more advanced civilization encounters a less advanced one, the outcome is rarely peaceful for the weaker side. Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. So we assume the worst. Yes, Sarah said, and we hope we're wrong. She advanced to the next slide. First, we must assume they already know everything about our visible technology. Our satellites, our weapons, our infrastructure. Second, any preparation we make must not be detectable. No new electromagnetic emissions. No obvious industrial shifts. Nothing that would alert them. And third, someone asked. Sarah looked around the room. We stop competing with each other. That landed harder than any alien revelation. This cannot be an American project, or a Chinese project, or a Russian project, she continued. This has to be a human project. The debate that followed was fierce. Arguments flared. Old rivalries surfaced. But beneath it all was a shared understanding that cut through politics and pride. If Sarah was right, none of it mattered anymore. One by one, the objections fell away. Russia agreed. China agreed. Europe followed. Then the rest of the world. Dr. Martinez spoke for the group. We will create a joint program. Unlimited funding. Total secrecy. Sarah felt a weight settle onto her shoulders that made it hard to breathe. What do we call it? Someone asked. She hesitated, then said quietly, Project Silent Shield. Because if the Watchers were listening, humanity would give them nothing to hear. 3 days later, Sarah stood in a facility that officially did not exist. The elevator had descended for nearly a full minute, plunging deep beneath layers of rock and reinforced alloy. When the doors opened, a vast underground complex stretched out before her. Half-built, alive with activity. Scientists from every corner of the world moved through the space. Engineers argued over schematics. Physicists scribbled equations that challenged established laws. Computer scientists worked on systems that deliberately avoided traditional electronics. Above them, the world carried on as normal. Cars burned fuel. Nations argued. Wars flared and faded. Rockets launched using the same chemical propellants they always had. And the Watchers saw exactly what they expected to see. In orbit, the alien monitoring stations continued their silent work. They recorded human broadcasts, cataloged internet traffic, and updated predictive models. Everything aligned. Human computing power increased slowly. Energy production improved incrementally. Space exploration remained cautious and limited. No sudden leaps, no anomalies worth reporting. The analysts were satisfied. Deep underground, humanity had already made its first decision. They would not try to match alien technology. They would build something else entirely. Sarah stood on a platform overlooking the growing facility and addressed the assembled teams. We don't know what they are, she said, but we know one thing. They believe they understand us. That is our greatest advantage. She let that sink in. We will continue to look weak, disorganized, predictable, everything they expect. A murmur of grim agreement followed. And while they watched the surface, she finished, we will change what it means to be human. Above them, the planet turned peacefully beneath the stars. And somewhere beyond its moons, invisible eyes watched, confident, patient, and utterly unaware that the rules of the game had just changed. Time passed differently underground. On the surface, decades slipped by marked by elections, economic cycles, wars that began and ended, and technologies that improved in neat, predictable increments. Computers grew smaller and faster. Energy became cleaner. Humanity crept outward, establishing modest colonies on the Moon and Mars, exactly as the alien projections had predicted. Below the surface, time was measured in breakthroughs. Dr. Sarah Whitaker did not live to see most of them. She passed quietly in her sleep 42 years after Project Silent Shield began, her final days spent reviewing research logs she barely recognized anymore. The science had outgrown her generation. Her daughter, Dr. Lisa Whitaker, inherited more than a title. She inherited a mission. Lisa stood in the central observation gallery of the underground complex, now a vast city carved into bedrock and reinforced with layers of metamaterial shielding. The facility stretched for miles in every direction, housing tens of thousands of scientists, engineers, and specialists drawn from every culture on Earth. Above ground, humanity still looked divided. Below ground, it had never been more unified. "We're ready to begin the next phase," said Dr. James Carter, head of computational development. Lisa nodded. "Proceed." In Laboratory 7, the lights dimmed, not because power was lost, but because power was no longer needed in the conventional sense. The system at the center of the room did not rely on electrons moving through circuits. It relied on something far more dangerous: consciousness. The AI core activated without sound or signal. There was no boot sequence, no startup noise. It simply was. Lisa felt it before she saw any data. A presence brushed the edges of her awareness, gentle but vast. "System online," the voice said, not through speakers but directly into her thoughts. The room froze. "It's responding to intent," James whispered, "not commands. Thought patterns." Lisa closed her eyes and focused, not on words, but on meaning. Instantly, the holographic displays shifted, reorganizing themselves in response. No lag, no translation. The alien monitoring systems, tuned to electromagnetic emissions and energy fluctuations, detected nothing. To them, the room was empty. "This changes everything," Lisa said quietly. It did. The consciousness-guided AI became the backbone of Project Silent Shield. It did not replace human thought. It amplified it. Intuition, creativity, and instinct merged with computational speed. Decisions that once took weeks of simulation now took seconds, and the watchers never noticed. In another sector, an entirely different revolution was unfolding. Dr. Raj Patel watched from behind layered shields as a test object, a solid block of reinforced alloy, floated in the center of the chamber. His hands trembled slightly as he initiated the sequence. "Gravity field stable," the AI whispered into his mind. "Begin compression," Raj thought. Reality folded. The cube collapsed inward, not exploding, not melting, but imploding. In less than a second, it compressed into a point smaller than a grain of sand. Sensors screamed and then went silent. Raj exhaled shakily. Localized gravity manipulation confirmed. This was not a weapon in the traditional sense. There was no projectile, no beam, no warning. It rewrote the rules governing mass and force within a defined region. Against starships, it would be catastrophic. Elsewhere, engineers tested metamaterial hulls that did not bend light. They bent space-time. A prototype vessel sat in a cavernous hangar, its surface shimmering with patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Engage dimensional offset," a technician said. The ship vanished. Not cloaked, not invisible, gone. Sensors of every kind showed empty space. Radar, thermal imaging, gravitational mapping, nothing registered. The vessel had slipped partially into a parallel layer of reality, existing close enough to normal space to interact, but far enough away to be untouchable. Duration tests extended from minutes to hours, then days. Power consumption remained negligible. Lisa watched the data scroll past in silence. Humanity wasn't just matching alien technology anymore, it was surpassing it. Above ground, alien observation stations continued to feed information back to the hegemony. Analysts reviewed decades of human data with growing boredom. They advance slowly, one report concluded. Predictable technological curve. They've improved computing efficiency, another noted, but remain bound by classical electronic architecture. No evidence of advanced weapons development. The admiral, now ancient by human standards but still formidable, reviewed the summaries with satisfaction. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "They are exactly what we expected." He did not know that humanity had abandoned classical physics entirely. In the deepest levels of the complex, the final piece came together. Dr. Elena Morozov stood before a small device resting on an unremarkable table. To the untrained eye, It looked like a toy spacecraft. Hyperspace is not the only solution, she said during the weekly council meeting. It's just the first layer anyone ever finds. Lisa leaned forward. Explain. Elaborate dimensional analysis reveals at least 17 parallel layers adjacent to normal space, Elena continued. The aliens use one. We use all of them. She activated the device. The model ship vanished from one side of the room and appeared instantly on the other. No movement, no transition. From our perspective, Elena said, it teleports. From its own perspective, it simply travels through a different layer of reality. And the Watchers? Lisa asked. They don't even know those layers exist. Silence filled the room as the implications settled in. Human ships would not need hyperspace. They would not leave detectable signatures. They would not follow predictable paths. They could appear anywhere, at any time. By the end of the century, Project Silent Shield was no longer a defense initiative. It was an evolution engine. Lisa, now older, walked the halls where her mother had once stood. Generations of scientists had lived and died here. Their work carried forward seamlessly by consciousness-guided systems that remembered everything. Above ground, the alien admiral reviewed the final century projection. In 50 years, his grandchild reported, we will initiate conquest. Human resistance probability remains negligible. The admiral nodded. Prepare the fleet. Deep beneath Earth's crust, Lisa Whitaker stood before the assembled commanders of humanity's hidden forces. We are ready, she said simply. The hunters believed the century had made their victory inevitable. They never considered that the same century had made them obsolete. The invasion did not begin with explosions. It began with silence breaking. One moment, the outer reaches of Earth's solar system were empty, dark, cold, unchanged for billions of years. The next, space itself seemed to tear open. 10,000 alien warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Their arrival so sudden and massive that gravitational sensors across the system spiked in unison. To humanity's public instruments, it looked like a storm of stars had ignited where none had existed before. To the hegemony, it was the culmination of a century of patience. The alien armada hung in the void like a wall of metal and energy. Each vessel was larger than the greatest human battleships, their hulls etched with symbols of conquest earned across 200 subjugated worlds. Energy fields shimmered around them, weapons charged but silent. On the bridge of the flagship, known among the hegemony as the Destroyer of Worlds, the admiral stood tall. She was the granddaughter of the one who had first ordered the long observation of Earth, and she felt the weight of history settle comfortably on her shoulders. All ships report, she commanded. Fleet standing by, her communications officer replied. No resistance detected. The admiral allowed herself a thin smile. Begin standard scanning procedures. Confirm target status. Across the armada, alien sensors activated. Waves of analysis swept through Earth's orbital space, probing for defenses, fleets, or any sign that humanity had somehow grown beyond expectation. The data streamed in. Human radio traffic filled the channels. Civilian broadcasts, military chatter, orbital traffic between Earth, the Moon, and Mars. Fusion reactors glowed faintly on planetary scans. Chemical rockets traced slow arcs through space. Primitive. Report, the admiral said. The science officer did not hesitate. The humans match our projections precisely. Incremental technological advancement only. No advanced weapon systems. No significant space-based defenses. Any hidden installations? The admiral asked. None detectable. No energy signatures beyond expected levels. Perfect. They haven't changed, the admiral said softly. They never do. She turned toward the main display, where Earth rotated peacefully, unaware, or so it seemed, of the fleet poised to claim it. Prepare the surrender transmission. On Earth, alarms sounded for the first time. Satellites detected the armada in full. Governments scrambled. Emergency sessions convened. The news spread across the planet in minutes. panic blooming faster than any invasion force ever could. But deep underground, there was no panic. In the primary command center of the Solar Defense Network, Admiral Elena Whitaker, great-granddaughter of Dr. Sarah Whitaker, stood calmly before a wall of displays that showed the alien fleet in precise, terrifying detail. Except these were not ordinary displays. Information flowed directly into her mind through the consciousness-guided AI. Distances, vectors, weaknesses, probabilities. She did not read the battlefield. She understood it. Tactical status, she thought. Alien fleet strength, 10,847 vessels, the AI replied instantly. Formation consistent with standard conquest doctrine. No awareness of human ghost fleet. A flicker of satisfaction passed through her. Around the alien armada, 300 human vessels already waited, unseen, undetected, existing partially outside normal space. They were positioned with surgical precision, gravity weapons locked onto critical nodes, reality anchors primed. The hunters were surrounded. The alien transmission cut through global communication networks without resistance. Every screen on Earth flickered, then displayed the same towering figure, four-eyed, armored, unmistakably alien. Primitive inhabitants of Earth, the Admiral of the Hegemony announced. Your world is now under our protection. You will surrender your military assets and political authority within 24 of your planetary hours. Compliance will ensure survival. Resistance will be corrected. The message ended. On the alien bridge, confidence reigned. The Admiral expected fear, confusion, perhaps desperation. What she did not expect was a response. Her sensors registered nothing. No ship, no station, no signal source. And yet a calm, human voice filled the bridge. Thank you, but it said evenly, for the century you gave us to prepare. The Admiral stiffened. Identify yourself, she snapped. Show your vessel. There is no need, the voice replied. You wouldn't be able to see it anyway. The science officer's frills flared in alarm. Admiral, we are detecting no source for the transmission. It appears to be originating from empty space. Impossible. You have been watching us for 100 years, the human continued. You studied our public technology, our wars, our entertainment. You saw what we wanted you to see. The Admiral's confidence wavered for the first time. What is this deception? She demanded. The human voice remained calm, almost polite. A survival strategy. On Elena Whitaker's command display, the true battlefield lit up. Every alien ship was highlighted, each one encircled by ghostly markers representing human vessels phased just out of reach. You prepared to conquer a primitive world, Elena said. We prepared to destroy anyone who tried. On the alien bridge, officers shouted in confusion as their sensors failed to reconcile incoming data. Energy readings spiked, then vanished. Gravitational anomalies appeared and disappeared without cause. This is a trick, the alien admiral said sharply. Begin attack sequence. She refused to believe what she could not measure. Admiral, her science officer said, voice tight with unease. Our scans indicate distortions in space-time itself. The humans are operating in dimensional layers we cannot map. Nonsense, she snapped. Fire. The order echoed across the fleet and sealed their fate. The first minute felt unreal. Across the alien fleet, alarms began to sound without cause. Tactical displays flickered as ship after ship vanished from formation. Not exploding, not burning, simply ceasing to exist. Report, the alien admiral demanded. Her tactical officer stared at the display in disbelief. We have lost 400 vessels. No impact signatures, no weapon traces. The ships, they are gone. Gone was impossible. The human attack had begun without visible force. Inside alien hulls, matter conversion nodes materialized directly within structural supports, bypassing shields that had never been designed to stop weapons arriving from inside reality itself. Molecular bonds unraveled. Entire sections of warships dissolved into brilliant white light. Crews did not have time to scream. The admiral's claws dug into the command rail. Increase scanning resolution. I want every sensor at maximum output. Already at maximum, the science officer replied, voice strained. The anomalies are not following any known physical laws. Minute 2. Gravity betrayed them. Localized gravity wells appeared throughout the formation. Small at first, then monstrously strong. A heavy cruiser lurched as invisible forces crushed its hull inward. Reinforced armor buckled like paper. In seconds, the ship collapsed into a dense sphere of super-compressed metal. Gravity weapons, the science officer gasped. But controlled, directed. The gravity fields moved. They hunted. Alien ships attempted evasive maneuvers, but the fields followed with predatory precision, adjusting instantly to every vector change. Vessels that tried to flee were caught and folded into themselves, reduced to fragments smaller than asteroids. Panic spread. "We are under attack from empty space," an officer shouted. On the human flagship Invisible Hand, Admiral Elena Whitaker watched the battlefield unfold in perfect clarity. The consciousness-guided AI fed her probability streams directly into her awareness. Every alien response had already been predicted. Proceeding as expected, the AI confirmed. Minute 3. The alien admiral made the decision no commander ever wanted to make. "All ships," she ordered, voice tight. "Emergency hyperspace retreat, now." Hyperspace portals began to form, swirling fractures in reality that had saved countless fleets before. Then they collapsed. One by one, every escape route failed. "The portals are destabilizing," the navigation officer cried. "Something is anchoring us in normal space." Reality anchors activated. Across the battlefield, human devices locked space-time itself into place, preventing transitions between dimensions. Hyperspace ceased to function, not through disruption, but denial. The human voice returned, calm and merciless. "We designed those systems specifically for you. You're not leaving." The admiral felt fear for the first time in her long career. Minute 4. Desperation replaced doctrine. "All ships," she commanded, "concentrate fire on grid sector 77. Maximum output. Burn everything." Thousands of alien weapons fired simultaneously. Plasma beams, particle cannons, fusion missiles. Enough firepower to sterilize a planet converged on a single region of space. For a moment, it worked. Human ships flickered into partial visibility as the energy storm disrupted their dimensional phasing. Ghostly outlines appeared, vast, angular silhouettes larger than anything the alien fleet possessed. "Targets acquired," an officer shouted. Then the human counterattack began. Gravity pulse weapons fired, not as points, but as waves. Ripples of distorted space-time surged outward like invisible tsunamis. Where they passed, alien ships flattened instantly. Hulls compressed. Internal structures collapsed. Crews were crushed without warning. In 10 seconds, 2,000 ships were reduced to metallic disks, drifting silently through space. The alien fleet was no longer a fleet. It was wreckage. Minute 5. With extinction imminent, the alien admiral gave her final order. "Deploy planetary kill assets. Target Earth." Biological weapon pods launched en masse, releasing clouds of engineered microorganisms designed to strip a biosphere clean within hours. Even if the fleet died, Earth would follow. Admiral Whitaker had been waiting. Activate planetary shield. Around Earth, something impossible became visible. A shell of shimmering energy enveloped the planet, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The biological clouds struck the barrier and rebounded, reflected perfectly back along their vectors. The alien admiral watched in horror as her own weapons returned to their launch points. Entire ships were consumed from within as the microorganisms devoured hulls, crews, and systems alike. The final gamble had failed. Minute 6. Silence spread. Where 10,000 warships had once dominated space, only debris remained, glowing softly as residual energy dissipated. One ship remained, the flagship. The alien admiral stood amid wreckage and flickering consoles, surrounded by the stunned faces of her surviving crew. "How?" she whispered. A human hologram appeared on her bridge. A woman in a dark uniform, calm, resolute. "You spent a century watching our movies," Admiral Whitaker said. "You thought they were entertainment." The flagship shuddered as matter conversion beams began dissolving its outer hull. "We were training," Elena continued. "Every monster, every god, every impossible enemy, we imagined them all." The Admiral sank into her command chair, realization crushing her harder than any gravity weapon. "We were never your prey," Elena said softly. "We were your future." The flagship's shields failed. Light consumed the vessel. And then there was nothing. 6 minutes, that was all it took for the greatest military force in the known galaxy to vanish. The silence after the battle was heavier than the war itself. Where 10,000 alien warships had once hung like gods in the void, only drifting debris remained. Twisted hull fragments glowed faintly as the last traces of matter conversion energy faded away. Space, vast and indifferent, absorbed the evidence of annihilation without comment. For the first time in over a century, humanity's hidden fleet began to reveal itself. Dimensional distortions rippled across space as human vessels phased fully into normal reality. 300 ships emerged, vast, angular constructs of metamaterial and controlled space-time curvature. They did not move like traditional spacecraft. They appeared, repositioning instantly with silent precision. On the bridge of the Invisible Hand, Admiral Elena Whitaker watched the cleanup operations begin. Damaged alien technology was isolated and secured. Reality anchors slowly disengaged, releasing the grip that had locked space-time into place. The war was over. On Earth, the shock came in waves. Governments that had prepared for extinction now struggled to comprehend survival. Civilian populations watched leaked footage of the battle in stunned disbelief. Ships dissolving into light, weapons bending reality itself, an enemy erased in minutes. Within hours, the truth could no longer remain hidden. President Martinez stood before the United Nations General Assembly, the largest audience ever assembled in one place or connected remotely. Behind her, massive displays showed images of the human fleet, clear, undeniable. "For 100 years, she began, humanity has lived under observation." A murmur swept the chamber. "We were watched, measured, judged, and scheduled for conquest." She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "In response, we made a choice, not to panic, not to surrender, but to prepare." The president explained Project Silent Shield, its origins, its secrecy, and its purpose. She spoke of underground cities of science, of generations who lived and died without recognition, building a future no one on the surface was allowed to know. "We did not pretend to be weak," she said. "We chose to appear weak." Screens displayed slowed recordings of the 6-minute battle. Gasps echoed through the hall as alien fleets vanished, crushed by forces beyond conventional physics. "We are no longer the species we once were," President Martinez concluded. "Humanity has learned to manipulate gravity, consciousness, and the structure of reality itself." The revelation reshaped the world overnight. Facilities that had existed only as rumors were opened. Scientists walked the public through laboratories where dimensional travel was routine and AI responded to thought. Humanity confronted the truth of what it had become. But the greatest discovery came days later. Dr. Lisa Whitaker, now elderly but sharp-minded, led a joint team analyzing recovered alien data cores. Star maps filled the displays, dense clusters of systems marked with warning symbols. "These aren't military deployments," one analyst said quietly. "They're invasions." Dozens of worlds, then hundreds. The hegemony wasn't unique, Lisa said. They were part of a pattern. Records revealed at least 12 spacefaring empires actively conquering less advanced civilizations. Entire species were being erased, not because they were dangerous, but because they were behind. Lisa felt the same cold anger her mother once had. How many worlds are under attack right now? Admiral Whitaker asked through the quantum link. 47, came the reply, and rising. The room fell silent. Humanity had prepared to defend itself from extinction. Instead, it had become something else entirely. Admiral Whitaker opened a channel to Solar Defense Command. All fleet units, she said calmly, prepare for immediate deployment. On her bridge, star maps shifted to highlight a distant system, designation 442b, a small world, peaceful traders, under attack. For a century, she addressed the assembled fleet, we waited in silence while others decided our fate. The human ships aligned, reality anchors humming softly as dimensional drives charged. Today, she continued, we stopped waiting. Space twisted. The fleet vanished. Across the galaxy, alien empires continued their campaigns, confident in their superiority. They had no warning, no prophecy, no sensor that could detect what was coming. They would learn soon enough. Humanity was no longer hiding. The hunters had become guardians. And the real story of mankind among the stars was only just beginning.